On Halloween night in 1988, 9-year-old Emily Hargrove vanished near an abandoned farmhouse, and for 19 years, no one knew what happened to her. Authorities searched the surface, but beneath the Wilburson property, someone had been building something horrific, chambers meant to hide children, sealed with silence. It wasn't until a buried note, a scratched name, and a decades-old photo were unearthed that the truth finally clawed its way to light. This isn't just a disappearance. It's a decades-old nightmare, solved only when a mother refused to stop whispering her daughter's name. At 6:47 p.m. on Halloween night 1988, 9-year-old Emily Rose Hargrove was last seen alive. The air above Glenmore Township, a rural corner of Shelby County, Indiana, was crisp and dry, 40% degrees and falling. Streetlights were just beginning to flicker on as scattered groups of costumed children raced from porch to porch along Mill Creek Road, a winding lane cutting through farmland and disused pumpkin patches. Emily had dressed as a scarecrow, overalls, plaid shirt, straw poking from the sleeves. Her mother, Linda Hargrove, took a Polaroid before she left. Emily was clutching a burlap candy sack with her name stitched in pink thread. She was walking with two friends, Becca Tillman and Josie Ramirez, both age 10. The three girls were unsupervised but had a strict curfew, home by 8 sharp. They left Becca's porch at 6:35 p.m. According to both girls, Emily wanted to stop by a house with cool lights just beyond the last mailbox. That was the Wilburson Farm, an abandoned property known locally as Pumpkin Hollow. The house hadn't been occupied since 1979. Neighbors believed it was condemned, but kids dared each other to go up the long gravel path toward the broken front porch. Josie later said she told Emily not to go. "It's dark out there. No one even lives there." Emily giggled and ran up the path alone. Becca and Josie waited. 2 minutes, 3, then 5. They called out. No answer. By 7:02 p.m., they ran to Becca's parents in a panic. Mrs. Cheryl Tillman called 911 at exactly 7:06 p.m. 911 transcript, excerpt. Operator: Shelby County Emergency. What's your emergency? Caller: There's a little girl missing. My daughter's friend, Emily Hargrove. She ran off near that old Wilburson place and never came back. Operator: How long ago did she go missing? Caller: 10 minutes, maybe more. Please, she's just a baby. Operator: Units en route. Stay by the road. Do not enter the property. 2 sheriff's deputies arrived at 7:18 p.m. They found no signs of Emily in the front yard, porch, or gravel path. No blood, no candy sack, no screams heard by neighbors. Only a few scattered footprints in the soft mud behind the porch. Unclear if they were hers. The official missing person alert was issued at 7:41 p.m. By 9:00 p.m., search dogs, thermal drones, and flashlights were sweeping the perimeter. The Wilburson house was entered and cleared. The basement was partially flooded. The attic was empty except for bird droppings and insulation. By midnight, over 50 volunteers, including Glenmore firefighters, were combing nearby woods, ditches, and culverts. Emily's parents, Linda and Mark Hargrove, both stayed at the search command post, set up inside the local Methodist church gymnasium. Sheriff Tom Pritchard, who took over the site personally, would later say, "It was like she evaporated into the night air. We had everything within a quarter mile locked down inside 30 minutes. Still, no sign of Emily." At 2:16 a.m., a K-9 unit alerted briefly near a dried-out cornfield just west of the property line, but lost the scent after 50 feet. The dog circled once, then sat down, confused. The last credible sighting was by Becca. Emily walked into the dark, smiling. The official record marked her as vanished, presumed abducted. No vehicle seen, no scream, no witnesses. At sunrise, search teams stood in silence as the wind swept over the hollow. The pumpkin patch had long since gone to seed, just brittle vines and pale orange rot. Nothing remained of Emily, not even a thread of straw. But 19 years later, in that same forgotten field, kids would find something no one expected. By dawn on November 1st, 1988, Glenmore Township had transformed into a search grid. Temperatures hovered at 38 degrees, with fog lifting from low ditches. Over 3 square miles around the Wilburson property were cordoned off. Sheriff's deputies, volunteers, dogs, and aerial units from Shelby County Search and Rescue began combing the area. This was the critical window, the first 48 hours, when most child abductions are either solved or fade into years of silence. Sheriff Tom Pritchard called in mutual aid from neighboring precincts. A dedicated search command was activated at 6:05 a.m. Air Recon Unit 12, equipped with an FLIR 2000 infrared camera, launched at 6:34 a.m. Overhead sweeps returned nothing but deer and stray dogs in the woods west of the property line. Local volunteers walked fields in a staggered V formation, each spaced 10 feet apart, eyes scanning for fabric, wrappers, or blood. Nothing. A farmer named Eldon Myers, who owned the plot east of Pumpkin Hollow, told investigators he saw a girl with pigtails running near his fence around 6:50 p.m. the night before, but wasn't sure if it was Halloween costume or just some kid cutting through. That timestamp made it plausible, but Myers' property dead-ended in a marsh with no road access. Deputies spent the entire morning in rubber boots, prodding the bog with sticks. No trace. At 10:14 a.m., Becca Tillman was re-interviewed with a child psychologist present. She added one detail, something she'd omitted out of fear. There was a truck, she said. Black, parked on the gravel just past the barn. I didn't see the driver, but when we called for Emily, I heard, like, a door shut. This information prompted a change in the bolo. Local radio was updated at 10:38 a.m. to include a potential black pickup truck, possibly a Chevy CK, based on tire treads later found behind the Wilburson barn. By noon, more than 110 people were active in the search. Every drain pipe, haystack, and tool shed within 2 miles was opened, and yet, not a single physical object from Emily was recovered. At 2:23 p.m., the FBI placed Agent Kyle Rankin on site as a child abduction consultant. He reviewed the 911 call, the timeline, and footprint photos. His verdict, stranger abduction, likely premeditated. Local mothers began walking children home from school, Halloween decorations left in place like a forgotten celebration. At 4:55 p.m., a neighbor, Mrs. Audrey Langford, reported hearing a girl cry out around 7 p.m. the night before, but she couldn't locate where the sound came from. Deputies returned to her backfield with audio gear, but found nothing. Sheriff Pritchard held a brief press statement at 5:30 p.m. We are treating this as an active child abduction. We urge the public, anyone who drove past Mill Creek Road between 6:30 and 7:15 last night, please call us. No detail is too small. That night, high schoolers, volunteer firefighters, and ROTC cadets combed the forested edges under halogen towers. The entire township seemed suspended in one question. Where could a child disappear to in 10 minutes? By hour 36, the only hard clues were 3 boot prints behind the Wilburson barn, size 10.5, likely male, a partial Goodyear Wrangler at tread near the ditch, 1 broken button, possibly from Emily's costume, found under porch lattice, unconfirmed origin. At 8:01 p.m., the Hargrove family issued their own plea on Channel 9 News. Linda Hargrove spoke directly to camera, holding up the scarecrow costume. If someone has her, let her come home. She's just a little girl. She's not a threat to anyone. Please, please bring my baby back. The township prayed. The search teams returned. At 10:22 p.m., an officer searching along the railroad bed thought he heard laughter, only to find a raccoon stuck in plastic wrap. The woods were playing tricks. By midnight, fatigue set in. Sleet began to fall. Flashlights dimmed. Deputies slumped by their vehicles. And Emily was still gone. The 48-hour mark passed without a trace. But the town didn't know. One small clue had been overlooked in the official logs. One photo, taken by a local teen on Halloween night, showed something no one recognized. It wouldn't be rediscovered until almost 20 years later. By the morning of November 3rd, 1988, the case had escalated beyond county lines. The Indiana State Police officially joined the investigation, and regional media began running the story hourly. At 7:45 a.m., a Bell 206L-3 Long Ranger helicopter launched out of Indianapolis Metro Airport, carrying a FLIR 4000B infrared system and 2 troopers. Their target grid, the 13 square miles surrounding Glenmore Township, stretching from County Road 219 to the banks of the Muddy Fork River. Every ravine, sinkhole, and back trail was scanned. Still, no thermal signatures outside of wildlife. The brush was simply too thick, and by day 4, the trail had grown cold. On the ground, Shelby County mounted patrol units joined the effort, sweeping deep woods unreachable by truck. 2 cadaver dogs, Ruger and Cassie, were deployed at 10:12 a.m. Around 10:41 a.m., Ruger alerted near a thicket just south of a gravel pit. Deputies dug shallow probes, uncovering only a deer carcass wrapped in torn tarp, not uncommon in rural areas during culling season. But the hope had already flickered. Volunteers surged again. Teachers, veterans, local hunters, and scout leaders fanned out across the fields. Each was briefed by law enforcement. Look for fabric, candy wrappers, burlap, a child's shoe, strands of straw. At the Glenmore Library, volunteers printed over 2,000 missing posters using a borrowed Xerox machine. Emily's image, scarecrow costume, and innocent grin soon lined every phone pole, diner window, and mailbox. The Wilburson property became sacred ground. Journalists camped across the road. Local teens came to lay jack-o'-lanterns and drawings. One note read, "Emily, we miss you. Come home soon." At 3:18 p.m., a Channel 5 news helicopter circled the property live on air. "This is the 4th day of the Glenmore child search," the anchor reported. "Authorities have not confirmed any suspects. The last place Emily Hargrove was seen, that derelict structure behind me, remains the center of growing fear." Footage panned to the pumpkin field, but sharp-eyed viewers noticed something else. Just behind the porch lattice, a shape. Too small for an adult, too still for a person, but human-shaped. This detail went unremarked, at first. That evening, Deputy Susan Morley rewound the broadcast during her dinner break. At timestamp 000241, she paused, zoomed, froze. There, in the grainy footage, a blurred shape like a child curled into the dark underporch area. She radioed in. "Requesting code 4, return to Wilburson House. Possible visual anomaly under southeast porch. Send backup." At 8:42 p.m., a tactical flashlight beam swept under the structure again. Deputies crawled through mud and rotted wood, but there was no one there, just wind, dry leaves, and a single item missed on the first pass, a rusted pink thread caught in the nail of the porch joist. Lab analysis later confirmed, polycotton blend matching the Hargrove family's stitching materials. It wasn't enough to locate Emily, but it proved something chilling. She had reached that porch. She had crawled beneath it. What happened next? That answer wouldn't come for years. Meanwhile, one retired deputy later told interviewers, "That house became a black hole. We searched it 4 separate times, 4 teams, and every time, it felt colder inside." By week's end, more than 250 volunteers had participated in the largest child search in Shelby County history. And yet, no coat, no candy, no footprints beyond the porch, only shadows and silence. But back at Glenmore High School, a 16-year-old named Trevor Mills quietly handed a roll of undeveloped film to his older brother. "Hey," he mumbled, "I think I got something weird from Halloween night." The roll was forgotten, placed in a drawer. It wouldn't be processed until 2007, when a group of middle schoolers found the camera, and that roll. But for now, in 1988, Trevor never followed up. The shadow remained undeveloped. By the end of the first week, the disappearance of Emily Rose Hargrove had evolved from local tragedy to statewide fixation. Every Indiana station led with her story. National outlets, Dateline, Good Morning America, and Inside Edition, all sent field reporters to the muddy fringes of Pumpkin Hollow. Sheriff Pritchard, visibly fatigued in interviews, delivered daily updates on folding chairs beneath a blue canvas tent, usually flanked by FBI agent Kyle Rankin and local pastor Eli Kendricks, who'd become the family's unofficial liaison. It was on the 9th day, November 8th, that the first major false lead surfaced. A woman named Darla Kingsley, claiming to be a psychic from New Albany, arrived at the sheriff's office uninvited. She insisted she had seen the girl in a vision, lying near water, underground, wearing a mask of leaves. Initially dismissed, Darla escalated her claims during a radio interview on WZGB 103.7. "She's near the West Creek. Her hands are tied. She's still close, but not for long. The broadcast set off a frenzy. Dozens of listeners formed a spontaneous search party, flooding into the Muddy Fork Basin, tramping through private farmland and culverts. Authorities were forced to intervene at 2:11 p.m. and halt unauthorized searchers, some of whom were armed. Despite public scorn, Darla's vision led to a formal check of the abandoned Franklin Culvert, a notorious flooding zone, but yielded only raccoon nests and beer cans. The sheriff issued a brief warning the next morning. "We appreciate community interest, but speculation without evidence hinders our efforts. Please report credible leads only." But the damage had been done. By November 12th, the case had gone viral, by late 80s standards. A tabloid magazine, Midwest Eye, ran a front-page headline, "Was Emily Taken by Pumpkin Man?" The article referenced old Glenmore folklore about a spirit said to haunt the fields during harvest, pure fiction, drawn from a 1923 schoolhouse legend. But the story stuck. Kids began daring each other to visit the Wilburson house. One group of 14-year-olds broke in and spray-painted "Emily is gone forever" across the living room wall. That same week, deputies investigated a tip from a trucker who claimed he'd seen a man dragging a sack-shaped bundle near Interstate 74. But after reviewing footage from a nearby gas station, the figure turned out to be a homeless man hauling a duffel bag filled with soda cans. Another promising lead involved a black Chevy truck spotted by a resident near Mill Creek on Halloween night. The plate number was partially recorded as BYR 14, but DMV searches across 3 states returned no matches. By now, the evidence board inside the sheriff's command center had swelled to over 200 notes and leads, each pinned, tagged, color-coded, none connected. At the 1-month mark, Channel 5 aired a special report titled "The Hollow Remains Silent." One clip featured an interview with a delivery man who'd stopped his van briefly near the Wilburson barn on Halloween night. "I saw a shape in the field, thought it was a kid hiding. Then it didn't move. I stared at it through my windshield for a few seconds. Looked like a girl crouched, but the eyes were glowing, like reflection." No confirmation of this sighting was ever made. No footprints, no path, no second witness. The media clung to it for weeks. Meanwhile, Emily's bedroom remained untouched, her Halloween candy untouched on her desk. Her dog, Milo, sat by the door each night until he refused food. But even in the fog of noise, something quietly shifted. Agent Kyle Rankin, the FBI's child abduction specialist, received a call from a retired janitor who had worked at Glenmore Elementary until 1985. The man mentioned a name, Gareth Wilburson. "That house? It ain't been empty since '79. No one talks about Gareth. But he was real strange, even back in the day." Wilburson, the same name as the farm where Emily was last seen, and the man who owned it, never officially declared dead, just vanished. Agent Rankin opened a sealed county deed file. The owner of record was still Gareth Wilburson, and the house? No one had legally entered it in 9 years. By January 1989, winter had locked Shelby County in snow and silence. The pumpkin fields were dead, the vines brittle. The Wilburson house stood boarded and frostbitten, a grim monument behind yellow crime scene tape flapping in the wind. And the name Emily Rose Hargrove was no longer a headline, just a whisper. The Glenmore Sheriff's Office closed active operations on February 14, 1989, after 107 days. The case was formally transferred to suspended status, pending new leads. The FBI withdrew its agents. The Wilburson property was padlocked by court order. "We didn't give up," Sheriff Pritchard said at the press, "but we ran out of road." The Hargrove family changed, quietly and irrevocably. Mark Hargrove, Emily's father, returned to his mechanic job by April, though co-workers said he never looked the same. Linda left her part-time work as a library aide and began volunteering at Missing Children Midwest, where she sorted boxes of missing flyers from families like hers. Emily's bedroom remained untouched. Once a week, Linda sat on her daughter's bed, speaking softly to the empty space. "We're not moving your things, honey. You let us know when you're ready." On October 31st, 1989, exactly 1 year later, a candlelight vigil was held in front of the Glenmore Chapel. 73 people stood in silence, holding jack-o'-lanterns. Linda read a letter aloud. "If you're alive, baby, we love you. If you're gone, we will carry your name like fire. That letter would later be archived in the Indiana Missing Persons Memorial Registry. The evidence box was sealed on April 12, 1990, and stored in Shelf 3C of the County Cold Case Archive. Inside, the broken button, the porch joist thread, a cassette of Becca and Josie's interviews, a copy of the missing poster, a bag marked suspected soil transfer, later tested as inconclusive. The man named Gareth Wilberson, whose name still owned the house, remained a phantom. Property taxes had been unpaid since 1980, but no next of kin had ever surfaced. County title lawyers attempted to seize the land, but probate court stalled on lack of documentation. The land was stuck, one clerk said, like the house didn't want to be owned again. From 1990 to 1993, no new leads entered the file. Tips faded, posters yellowed, the media moved on. But on the 5th anniversary, October 31st, 1993, Linda was interviewed again by Channel 9. Her face was older, but her eyes sharp. People ask how we keep going. I tell them, not knowing is worse than anything else. We could live with the truth, but the silence, it's a kind of death. That segment went mostly unnoticed, except by one man. Detective Marvin Holt, recently retired from the Indianapolis Violent Crimes Division, had quietly followed the case for years. Watching the segment in his den, he paused the screen on the Wilberson house. Then he opened a file drawer. Inside, photos from a 1977 missing child case, never solved. One was of the same house, same front porch, same shattered attic window. The girl's name? Margaret Maggie Chandler, age 7. Last seen trick-or-treating outside Shelbyville. History doesn't echo, Holt would later write in his notes. It screams when no one's listening. He sent a typed letter to the Shelby County Sheriff's Office requesting access to their case archive. It would take 2 years for anyone to reply. But Holt's interest marked the beginning of something different, a whisper in the dark, refusing to die. A few months later, Linda received a brown envelope, no return address. Inside, a photocopy of Emily's missing poster, circled in red with the words, "Not forgotten." Not alone. No fingerprints, no DNA, no trace. But it was enough to make Linda leave a new candle at the Wilberson gate, alone in the frost. And that same year, down the road, 3 boys would dare each other to break into the house again. What they found in the cellar wasn't a body, not blood, just names scratched into the wall, one of them Emily's. The others? No one recognized them, not yet. Between 1994 and 2004, the Hargrove case became less an active investigation and more a local legend, whispered about by teens on Halloween, half remembered by retirees at the diner. The official records collected dust. Detective Marvin Holt's repeated requests to reopen the case were ignored by overworked county administrators. Shelby County had 2 active murders, a meth pipeline out of Ohio, and a firebug setting barns alight across 3 townships. An unsolved child case from 1988 was cold and closed, one sheriff noted in a memo. But Holt didn't forget. In 1996, after personally requesting files from 2 nearby counties, he discovered something unusual. In 1973, in a town just 18 miles east of Glenmore, a young girl named Kelly Varnum, age 9, vanished after school. Her last known location, the Wilberson property, where her uncle was a tenant farmer at the time. No body, no resolution. 3 cases, same place, no official link. Holt compiled a private dossier titled simply Hollow. Inside, maps, missing posters, soil studies, aerial photographs from 1962 to 1989. He circled 7 objects in those images that appeared, then vanished, without formal record. In 1999, Holt pitched the theory to a new deputy DA. "There's something in that land," he said. "Maybe not just a killer, maybe a pattern, a shape." He was dismissed as obsessed, retired, labeled fringe. Meanwhile, Linda Hargrove began mailing birthday cards to herself every October 18th, Emily's birthday, with a stamp addressed "From E." She said it helped her feel her daughter hadn't been erased. Mark Hargrove left Glenmore in 1997, remarried in Illinois, never returned. The town moved on, but the internet did not. In 2001, a conspiracy forum called cornfieldfiles.net uploaded a detailed thread titled The Glenmore Pattern, 3 Girls, 1 Field, 19 Years. Within days, a user under the alias Furnace Glass Sophie 4 posted, Wilburson's house was built on top of an old homestead. There are tunnels down there, old ones, used during the Civil War. This sparked a storm of speculation. Was Pumpkin Hollow originally part of a clandestine burial site? Did someone use it as a hiding ground for decades? Who was Gareth Wilburson, and why had he never been declared dead? Investigators never formally responded. The house was officially marked for demolition in 2002, but the funding lapsed. In 2003, kids filming a camcorder horror movie near the Hollow claimed they heard voices under the porch. Their tape was blurry, sound unclear. But the rumor spread. Linda ignored it, mostly, until she received a voicemail in September 2004. A female voice, soft, faint, filtered through static. Mom, it's cold down here. It lasted only 6 seconds. The number was untraceable. The signal, pinging from an unregistered tower, located just 1.7 miles from the Wilburson barn. She handed the recording to police. They said it was likely a cruel prank. But Linda knew her daughter's voice. She used to say that exact line whenever she forgot her jacket. Mom, it's cold down here. The case was briefly reopened for 72 hours, then closed again after a failed trace. But one new detective, Rachel Kwan, made a quiet note in the digital file. No prank lasts 16 years, not like this. She began reviewing Holt's file. And she found something buried in a scanned deed transfer application from 1959. The name Gareth Wilburson appeared, but he wasn't listed as owner. He was listed as a witness to the death of a girl named Margaret Chandler. Cause of death, accidental drowning, dry well. Coordinates, 394452 degree N, 85.79 with 1 degree W. Current location, center of the Wilburson field. No excavation had ever been done, not yet. By spring 2005, Detective Rachel Kwan had quietly reopened the Hargrove file under an internal category, dormant missing, viable geoforensic entry. She needed more than folklore. She needed data. Her first move, request a site survey of the Wilburson property, specifically targeting the GPS coordinates 39.4452 degree N, 85.79 Wavendig W, the location listed on Margaret Chandler's 1959 death certificate, now long built over. Kwan partnered with the Indiana Geological Survey Unit, which had recently acquired a Kongsberg EM2040 side-scan sonar array, typically used for riverbed mapping, but now repurposed for shallow terrain modeling. On June 3, 2005, a technician named Avi Grant deployed the system across the overgrown field behind the Wilburson barn. Within 4 hours, they had a 3D terrain model of the subsurface structure, and it revealed something chilling. At exactly 7.2 feet underground, there appeared to be a void, roughly 4 by 6 feet, with geometric edges, not a natural formation. Beneath it, a second cavity, sloping inward. Avi tapped the monitor. That's a shaft. Someone sealed a shaft. Kwan authorized a magnetometer scan the next day. It detected a ferrous signal, something metal, buried directly over the cavity. Analysis of historical aerial photos showed that prior to 1978, there had been a small structure at that exact spot, now gone. A tool shed, outhouse. No records remained. Kwan marked the report. Priority excavation candidate. Possible dry well collapse cover. At this point, the Shelby County Sheriff's Department was finally looped in. Sheriff Alan Pritchard, son of retired Sheriff Tom Pritchard, approved a limited dig, but the project stalled for 6 months due to property status. The land, still under the name Gareth Wilburson, had become an unclaimable asset. No next of kin, no will, no lien holder. Until a man named Harris Fielding, a tax recovery attorney from Chicago, filed a claim. He claimed to be Gareth's grandnephew. He submitted a single document, a letter, dated 1980, with Gareth's signature, instructing him to never return and to keep the land quiet. Kwan investigated Fielding. He had no known ties to Indiana, no previous record of ever mentioning the Wilburson family. And yet, The court granted temporary custodianship of the land to Fielding, stalling the excavation indefinitely. Kwan pushed back, filed motions, wrote memos, and then a break. Emily's missing person file had been digitized and cross-referenced through the Name Use Initiative, a national DNA and unidentified remains database. In early 2006, a partial mitochondrial DNA sample found in an unrelated case in Michigan triggered a ping. The tissue belonged to a female, age 7 to 10, but the sample was degraded. The source? A burlap scrap retrieved in 1999 during an unrelated search for a missing hiker in St. Ignace State Forest. The scrap matched the stitching profile from Emily's candy sack, but the DNA was too partial to confirm identity. Still, it was enough for Rachel Kwan to refile her excavation motion. She cited GPS-aligned structural anomalies, metal signal over subsurface shaft, historical patterns of missing children, the Fielding letter, which mentioned keep the land quiet. The court ordered a temporary access permit, and in early April 2007, nearly 19 years after Emily vanished, a 4-person forensics team broke ground behind the Wilburson barn. At 11:12 a.m., a core sample drill struck metal. At 11:49, a lid. Buried under 8.1 feet of soil, they uncovered a metal hatch with no lock, just a rusted iron ring. It wasn't listed in any site records, not part of any known septic or well system. When lifted, it released a burst of ammonia-rich air, noxious, foul. A drone camera was lowered. Infrared returned a rectangular cavity, damp, lined with brick. Something glinted in the corner, but just as the drone approached it, the feed cut to black. At first, they thought it was power loss, but the drone's recording was intact. Playback revealed 2.3 seconds of the chamber interior, and on frame 41 of the footage, a name etched in brick. Emily, April 14, 2007, 6:37 a.m. The dig site behind the Wilburson barn had transformed into a full forensic containment zone. A temporary tent covered the area. A subsurface entry chamber had been exposed, now drained of stagnant water, and a remote-operated vehicle, ROV, fitted with lights, sonar, and air sensors, was prepped for descent. For the record, this was now an official crime scene. Detective Rachel Kwan stood behind the command screen beside Dr. Elisa Vall, a structural archaeologist, and Diver Command Unit Chief Nathan Wells, who'd worked over 60 cold case retrievals in his career. They lowered the ROV down the brick shaft at exactly 7:02 a.m. ROV log, Unit Echo 3, 14 April 2007, 07:02, 14. Entry confirmed. Chamber dimensions, 5.8 FTW x 7.3 FTL x 6.1 FTH, 07:02, 49. Visibility, 38%, light fog. Wall composition, red clay brick, partial mold, organic staining. 07:03, 13. Foreign object, FO1, detected in SE corner, appears to be cloth bundle. 07:03, 38. FO2, metal pail, oxidized, contains degraded paper scraps. 07:04, 21. Audio anomaly, high frequency harmonic, channel 15 kHz, 0.7 seconds, unknown source. 07:04, 55. FO3, wooden slat engraved, ERH confirmed. 07:05, 0. Operator note, stop, zoom, freeze. 07:05, 23. Image, freeze. Pale shape behind corner vent, human size, motionless. The entire chamber had been sealed by packed dirt and cement, leaving only a single vent slit cut into the far wall, barely 6 inches wide. It was unclear whether any oxygen could pass through it. Inside the vent, the ROV spotted something else, a glass bottle wedged between 2 bricks. Stamped on the base, C. Varnum, 1973. C. Varnum, the last name of Kelly Varnum, the 9-year-old girl who'd vanished 15 years before Emily. This was no coincidence. Chief Wells called for manual inspection. The team donned Tyvek suits, filtered respirators, and entered the pit via a reinforced descent ladder at 08:14 a.m. Inside the chamber, the smell of preserved rot, mildew, and rust was overwhelming. The walls were carved, dozens of scratch marks and letters. Most were unintelligible, but 4 names could be made out: Kelly, Maggie, Emily, and a final one, RL, scratched over and over and over again. In the far corner, investigators recovered the cloth bundle, what remained of a burlap candy sack, pink thread, hand-stitched. Inside it, 3 petrified candy wrappers, Tootsie Roll, Jolly Rancher, Bit-O-Honey. A Polaroid photograph, blurred, of 3 girls in Halloween costumes, smiling. A note, water-stained but still legible. I heard them above, but no one heard me. Please find the others. Lab teams lifted trace DNA from the inside of the sack. One source matched Linda Hargrove, confirming maternal relation. But there was more. Behind a loose brick near the bottle marked C. Varnum, they found a small metal tin. Inside, a milk tooth, a dry braid of hair, a plastic button, blue, size child. 6. A silver chain with a tiny jack-o'-lantern charm. It matched the charm bracelet Emily had worn that night, the one she wasn't supposed to wear because it might fall off. Dr. Vall was the first to say it aloud. This chamber wasn't built to trap someone. It was built to keep them hidden. Forensic pathologists found no human remains in the chamber, yet biological residue on the bricks confirmed human occupancy for a sustained period of time. Later analysis would show the brick vent had once led to a now sealed dry well shaft, connected to a larger drainage tunnel, caved in sometime between 1989 to 1991. Emily may have been alive for hours or days, trapped, scratching names, writing notes no one saw. Her final act, hiding her name and the names of others. Within 72 hours of the chamber excavation, every recovered item, the burlap sack, the charm bracelet, the Polaroid, the note, the bottle, the brick carvings, was sealed, logged, and transferred to the Indiana State Police Forensic Laboratory in Indianapolis. Forensic biologist Dr. Amanda Kressler led the analysis. Her task, determine once and for all whether this sealed cavity beneath Pumpkin Hollow was a symbolic tomb or a functional one. The first test, DNA swab from the interior of the burlap sack, returned a 99.89% familial match to Linda Hargrove. This by itself was legally sufficient to establish that Emily Rose Hargrove had been present in that chamber. But the next finding was worse. On the wooden slat marked ERH, blood residue was discovered, dried, degraded, but reactive under Blue Star luminol. It tested positive for human blood type O+, Emily's blood type, according to her pediatric record. Then came the Polaroid. Once enhanced, the photo revealed 3 girls, one in a scarecrow costume, one in a ballerina outfit, and one as a cat, whiskers drawn on with black marker. The girl in the scarecrow outfit was indisputably Emily. The other 2, Kelly Varnum, 1973, and Margaret Chandler, 1977, verified through side-by-side photo records. All 3 girls had vanished decades apart, but here they were, together, in the same room. But how? The film stock was dated, Polaroid Type 600, manufactured October 1988. The camera used was discontinued by 1989. Experts confirmed the photo could not have existed before Emily vanished. This image, said Dr. Kressler, should be impossible. And yet, it was real. The physical location had preserved more than scraps. It had preserved a pattern, a deliberate architecture of concealment. A structural scan of the vent shaft revealed a sealed break in the brick just behind it, a collapsed junction point. Detective Kwan ordered a spectral ground-penetrating radar, GPR scan, on April 24, 2007. The scan revealed a second chamber, partially collapsed, connected by a blocked passage. It was 9.6 feet west of the original shaft, buried even deeper. Inside this second chamber, based on sonar, appeared to be metallic debris, organic material, and, faintly, the outline of a human skeletal structure. Due to the collapse, manual entry was impossible. Kwan authorized a microboring core sample, extracted at 9:12 a.m. the next morning. What came back? Fragments of child-sized shoe leather, milk teeth, a wristwatch engraved on the back with the initials MC, one lock of red hair tied with twine. The name Margaret Chandler, vanished in 1977, had red hair, the same shade. This wasn't just a site. It was a multi-chamber tomb. Kwan called for the state archaeological emergency team. Excavation permits were fast-tracked. Meanwhile, Linda Hargrove was brought in to review the evidence. She was handed the charm bracelet. She pressed it to her chest, then said in a whisper, "This was hers. I bought it at the Dollar Tree, 2 days before she vanished. She wasn't supposed to wear it. She said she'd hide it in her sack if I found out. The case had now fully shifted from missing child to probable multiple homicide, retroactively implicating decades of disappearances. The final discovery that week came from an unexpected source. A retired data archivist from the Indiana DMV reached out. He'd seen coverage of the Wilburson dig and was reminded of an old transfer document. Back in 1990, someone had attempted to register a vehicle, a black Chevy CK pickup, using the Wilburson property as a mailing address. The name on the form? Harris Fielding, the man who claimed to be Gareth Wilburson's nephew and blocked the 2005 dig for over a year. A warrant was drafted, but by the time they arrived at Fielding's listed residence in Chicago, it was empty. And so was his bank account. And so was the safety deposit box registered in his name, save for one item. A hand-drawn map of the Wilburson property, dated 1971. It showed 5 chambers. Only 2 had been uncovered so far. May 2nd, 2007, 7:04 a.m. A yellow backhoe stood idling in the fog, surrounded by tents and temporary fencing. For the first time in decades, the town of Glenmore had issued a restricted excavation permit to access a suspected multi-victim clandestine burial site beneath the Wilburson property. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was about Kelly, Maggie, and maybe others. The second chamber was breached at 9:18 a.m. after forensic engineers tunneled through a reinforced side wall and installed structural braces to prevent collapse. Cameras were inserted first. What they saw chilled every investigator on site. A shallow room, more like a crawl space, with stone walls, hand-cut, inconsistent. Inside, partially entombed in clay. 2 sets of juvenile remains, one curled, one prone. A third bundle, too degraded to immediately distinguish. And in the center, a metal milk crate, within it, cloth, bones, and 2 plastic dolls. In one doll's mouth was a note. It read, "She was too loud. The others were quiet. I told them to be quiet. G.W. Gareth Wilburson," the name long whispered, now possibly confirmed, in writing. The remains were extracted with surgical care and transferred to the Indiana State Coroner's Office for forensic processing. Initial estimates. Victim 1, female, 6 to 8 years, red hair, evidence of head trauma. Victim 2, female, 9 to 10 years, brown hair, fractured wrist, shallow cuts on the tibia. Victim 3, undetermined sex, age 8 to 11, near total decomposition. Dental records confirmed the second skeleton to be Margaret Chandler, gone since Halloween 1977. For the others, it would take mitochondrial DNA, cross-referenced with family samples collected over the decades. While tests were underway, Detective Kwan combed through what little was known about Gareth Wilburson. The most chilling piece surfaced from a 1962 psychological file buried in a defunct juvenile asylum archive. At age 12, Gareth was admitted to Greystone Youth Facility for violent outbursts. The notes read, all 3 girls had vanished decades apart, but here they were, together, in the same room. But how? The film stock was dated, Polaroid Type 600, manufactured October 1988. The camera used was discontinued by 1989. Experts confirmed the photo could not have existed before Emily vanished. This image, said Dr. Kressler, should be impossible. And yet, it was real. The physical location had preserved more than scraps. It had preserved a pattern, a deliberate architecture of concealment. A structural scan of the vent shaft revealed a sealed break in the brick just behind it, a collapsed junction point. Detective Kwan ordered a spectral ground-penetrating radar, GPR scan, on April 24, 2007. The scan revealed a second chamber, partially collapsed, connected by a blocked passage. It was 9.6 feet west of the original shaft, buried even deeper. Inside this second chamber, based on sonar, appeared to be metallic debris, organic material, and, faintly, the outline of a human skeletal structure. Due to the collapse, manual entry was impossible. Kwan authorized a microboring core sample, extracted at 9:12 a.m. the next morning. What came back? Fragments of child-sized shoe leather, milk teeth, a wristwatch engraved on the back with the initials MC, 1 lock of red hair tied with twine. The name Margaret Chandler, vanished in 1977, had red hair, the same shade. This wasn't just a site, it was a multi-chamber tomb. Kwan called for the State Archaeological Emergency Team. Excavation permits were fast-tracked. Meanwhile, Linda Hargrove was brought in to review the evidence. She was handed the charm bracelet. She pressed it to her chest, then said in a whisper, "This was hers. I bought it at the Dollar Tree, 2 days before she vanished. She wasn't supposed to wear it. She said she'd hide it in her sack if I found out." The case had now fully shifted from missing child to probable multiple homicide, retroactively implicating decades of disappearances. The final discovery that week came from an unexpected source. A retired data archivist from the Indiana DMV reached out. He'd seen coverage of the Wilburson dig and was reminded of an old transfer document. Back in 1990, someone had attempted to register a vehicle, a black Chevy CK pickup, using the Wilburson property as a mailing address. The name on the form? Harris Fielding, the man who claimed to be Gareth Wilburson's nephew and blocked the 2005 dig for over a year. A warrant was drafted. But by the time they arrived at Fielding's listed residence in Chicago, it was empty. And so was his bank account. And so was the safety deposit box registered in his name, save for one item. A hand-drawn map of the Wilburson property, dated 1971. It showed 5 chambers. Only 2 had been uncovered so far. May 2nd, 2007, 7:04 a.m. A yellow backhoe stood idling in the fog, surrounded by tents and temporary fencing. For the first time in decades, the town of Glenmore had issued a restricted excavation permit to access a suspected multi-victim clandestine burial site beneath the Wilburson property. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was about Kelly, Maggie, and maybe others. The second chamber was breached at 9:18 a.m. after forensic engineers tunneled through a reinforced sidewall and installed structural braces to prevent collapse. Cameras were inserted first. What they saw chilled every investigator on site. A shallow room, more like a crawl space, with stone walls, hand-cut, inconsistent. Inside, partially entombed in clay, 2 sets of juvenile remains, one curled, one prone. A third bundle, too degraded to immediately distinguish. And in the center, a metal milk crate, within it, cloth bones and 2 plastic dolls. In one doll's mouth was a note. It read, "She was too loud, the others were quiet. I told them to be quiet. G.W. Gareth Wilburson," the name long whispered, now possibly confirmed, in writing. The remains were extracted with surgical care and transferred to the Indiana State Coroner's Office for forensic processing. Initial estimates: Victim 1, female, 6 to 8 years, red hair, evidence of head trauma. Victim 2, female, 9-10 years, brown hair, fractured wrist, shallow cuts on the tibia. Victim 3, undetermined sex, age 8 to 11, near total decomposition. Dental records confirmed the second skeleton to be Margaret Chandler, gone since Halloween 1977. For the others, it would take mitochondrial DNA, cross-referenced with family samples collected over the decades. While tests were underway, Detective Kwan combed through what little was known about Gareth Wilburson. The most chilling piece surfaced from a 1962 psychological file buried in a defunct juvenile asylum archive. At age 12, Gareth was admitted to Greystone Youth Facility for violent outbursts. The notes read, "Subject claims to see lights in the well. Insists voices tell him to seal the girls so they don't fly away. Diagnosed paranoid schizophrenia. Released without ongoing supervision at age 18. 2 years later, the first child, Kelly Varnum, vanished on land where Gareth was working as a farmhand. In 1979, Gareth himself disappeared, but bank withdrawals under his Social Security number continued through 1985. One retired teller remembered a man matching his description. He didn't talk, just slid the withdrawal slip forward, looked unwashed, like he'd been underground. The investigation shifted focus to Harris Fielding, the supposed nephew. In reality, there was no familial link. He had used falsified probate documents to claim property rights. His known aliases matched other unsolved property disputes, including one in West Virginia, where another girl disappeared in 1992. Interpol was alerted. On May 16th, DNA results confirmed the worst. The first skeleton, Kelly Varnum, missing since 1973. The second, Margaret Chandler. The third, partial match to Emily Rose Hargrove, mitochondrial confirmation, 97.3%. Not all of her had been found, but enough. Detective Kwan stood at the press conference on May 18, 2007, flanked by the coroner, forensic team, and a trembling Linda Hargrove. We can now confirm that this site was used to entomb at least 3 young girls between 1973 and 1988, Kwan stated. Their names, Kelly, Maggie, and Emily, will no longer be whispered. They will be spoken. They will be remembered. Linda stepped forward, holding Emily's charm bracelet. My daughter didn't run. She didn't disappear. She was buried, and we finally dug deep enough to hear her voice. But even as the truth surfaced, another mystery rose with it. Inside that same crate, behind the dolls, was a fourth charm, one no one recognized. A tiny silver moon, not Emily's, not Maggie's, not Kelly's. And the initials etched faintly into its side, RL. The same initials carved over and over into the first chamber wall, but no record of any missing girl with those initials existed in Shelby County. Not yet. June 1st, 2007, 2 p.m. The multi-purpose room at Shelby County Courthouse was packed. Folding chairs, TV cameras, sweating reporters in rolled-up sleeves. On the long table in front sat the team that had followed the truth all the way into the dirt. Detective Rachel Kwan, Chief Medical Examiner Dr. C. Isaac Merrill, Forensic Analyst Amanda Kressler, and Linda Hargrove, with her fingers clenched around a copy of Emily's school photo. This was it. After 19 years, the community would finally hear the full truth, in the open, on record, with no shadows left. Sheriff Alan Pritchard opened. Today we confirm that the remains recovered from the Wilburson property include 3 identified victims: Kelly Varnum, 1973, Margaret Chandler, 1977, and Emily Rose Hargrove, 1988. The site is now considered a multi-victim burial location, active over at least a 15-year span. The evidence strongly implicates Gareth Wilburson, now presumed deceased, and a man using the alias Harris Fielding, who remains at large. He stepped back. Detective Kwan stood. We want to thank every agency, every volunteer, and every family who never gave up. These children were not forgotten. They were buried, but their names are now unearthed. Then came questions. Press conference Q&A. Transcript, excerpt. Q. WTHR 13. Detective Kwan, do you believe Emily was alive in the chamber after her abduction? A. Based on the physical condition of the chamber, the note, and air vent structure, we believe she may have survived for several hours, possibly up to 48, after entering the space. Q. Indianapolis Star. Was Wilburson working alone? A. We can't rule out assistance. However, we believe he controlled access and likely constructed or modified the chambers himself. Q. Wish TV. Has there been any movement in locating Harris Fielding? A. Fielding remains a fugitive. We believe he assumed multiple identities and may have served as a caretaker of the property after Wilburson's disappearance. Q. Freelancer. What about the initials RL and the Silver Moon charm? A. At this time, we have no confirmed identity attached to those initials. No known missing child matches that description in Shelby County records. But we are actively cross-referencing state and federal databases. The press conference ended at 2:42 p.m. with a standing round of applause, not for the officials, but for Linda. She had sat through it all, silent. Only at the end did she stand and speak. To everyone who held on to this with us, thank you for giving Emily her name back. We don't bury children in silence. We say their names until the earth gives them back. After the cameras stopped, a small girl stepped forward from the crowd. She handed Linda a folded paper. Inside was a child's drawing, a pumpkin patch, and 3 girls holding hands. The middle girl wore a scarecrow hat. At sunset, a crowd of nearly 300 gathered at the old field. Each held a candle. Each whispered the names. Kelly, Maggie, Emily, and then silence, but not closure, because in that moment, a call came in to Detective Kwan's line, a tip from Knox County, 4 hours south. A family whose daughter had vanished in 1984 initials RL. They'd never filed a formal report. The father had been wanted on unrelated charges, and they feared law enforcement. The girl's name, Rosalind Lively. Brown hair, age 10, last seen in the back of a black pickup truck with Indiana plates. Her mother heard about the silver moon charm on the radio. She wore one just like that, she said it was her moonlight badge. Her DNA was submitted that night. The pumpkin patch was quiet again, but silence didn't mean peace. By autumn 2008, the Wilburson property had been fully excavated. The chambers beneath had been sealed with reinforced concrete, and the field flattened under orders from the State Historical Board. No new structures would ever be built there. Where once a farmhouse stood in rot and shadow, there now stood a white wooden fence, trimmed each season by volunteers. In the center, a cast-iron memorial plaque, polished monthly by the local VFW chapter, in memory of those who were taken. Emily Rose Hargrove, 1979-1988, Margaret Chandler, 1970-1977, Kelly Varnum, 1965-1973, Rosalind Lively, 1904-1984. No headstones, just names. The town of Glenmore stopped calling it Pumpkin Hollow. On the maps, it was renamed Emily's Field. Each Halloween since the discovery, a candlelight vigil is held at dusk. Families bring lanterns, teachers bring students. Old detectives return with trembling hands. They don't speak loudly. The wind carries enough sound. In 2009, Linda Hargrove moved out of town. She didn't leave a forwarding address, but every October 31st, she came back. She always came alone. That year, she wore a dark coat and brought a single jack-o'-lantern, carved simply with 3 triangles and a toothless grin, the same face Emily made in the last Polaroid. She knelt by the fence. The grass was cool and wet. From her pocket, she pulled out a small burlap sack, frayed from time but still pink-stitched with the name Emily. She tied it to the post again. No one came to disturb her. No reporters, no questions, not anymore. But then, a sound behind her. Small footsteps on gravel. A child? She turned. A girl stood there, no older than 10. Pale coat, silver moon charm around her neck. "Are you the mom from the news?" she asked. Linda swallowed. "I was. I suppose I still am." The girl tilted her head. "Did you ever find her?" Linda knelt again beside the lantern. "We found where she had been. We found her voice scratched in brick, her name, her note. We found that she never gave up." The girl stared at the fence, then back at the field. "I like that they're all together now." Then she ran, quick, silent, disappearing over the hill like breath in the cold. Linda looked after her for a moment, then down at the charm on the girl's neck, a silver moon, just like Rosalind's. Was it coincidence? No, it didn't matter, because Emily was no longer lost. She had been buried, yes, but now she had been found in the only way that matters, by people who still said her name. Later that night, Detective Rachel Kwan returned alone to the site. She stood quietly near the fence, holding a folder. Inside were 2 items. First, a notarized letter confirming that Harris Fielding had once been institutionalized under the name Leopold Grinshaw, discharged in 1983. No photos on record, no known burial. Second, a hand-drawn map, recovered from Fielding's storage unit. It showed the chambers, the tunnel shafts, even the vent system. But in the corner, drawn in pencil, was something else. A list. 4 names: Kelly, Maggie, Emily, Rosalind, and then a 5th, blank, with only one word beneath. Wait. Rachel closed the folder. Then she said each of their names aloud, clearly, without fear. Because remembering isn't a ceremony, it's resistance. And silence is how the forgotten vanish again. Reflection and legacy. Emily's Field is now protected by local ordinance. No development, no digging, no private access. Each spring, children from Glenmore Elementary plant sunflowers along the fence. A local scholarship bears Emily's name. Rachel Kwan eventually published a book. Linda Hargrove stopped attending the vigil in 2017, but her note is still there, tied to the post. It reads, "You were brave. You wrote your name in the dark. I'll carry it in the light." For every voice that was silenced, there are still those who listen. And for every child buried in secret, there is someone still digging. If you remember their names, they are never truly gone. Comment, never forgotten, if you'll carry their names with you. Like, share, subscribe, to keep their memory alive.